Hey, what's up guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm doing a Darklord deck profile, and man, am I excited for this one, because this deck is a deck that I have been excited for since the announcement of the first Darklord. When the first Darklord got announced and I saw the artwork of that card, I was like, oh no, they're making a big boy Darklord, and they're already big. What are they going to do for this one? And they made this card, and I read it, and I was like, oh, that's really, really good. And then I read that it was a trap that you had to fusion summon it with, and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then I actually started playing around with the combos, and it actually can activate during your opponent's turn to board wipe your opponent, which is insane. It being a 4K beat stick that can summon on your opponent's turn and completely board wipe them is actually crazy. So, without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon because we got some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your game scripts for every single video, getting a signed card sent to the mail, or even getting requested deck profile every month that you're a patron, just like this one, along with test hands. So, without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Darklord A Shell. So Darklord A Shell has the ability that you can discard her and another Darklord to draw 2 cards. And then a lot of your Darklords share the ability that during either player's turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, and then target a Darklord spell or trap in your graveyard and apply that target's effect, and then shuffle that card into the deck. So if I have in my graveyard a copy of Darklord Banishment, that's the basically the searcher of the deck that lets you search any Darklord card in the deck. If I activate it once, search the shell, and then get a shell on my side of the field, I can then activate her effect, pay 1,000 life points, shuffle the banishment back into the deck, and then get to add another Darklord card from my deck to my hand. So I essentially get 2 searches for the price of 1,000 life points, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Darklord Morningstar. Darklord Morningstar is a 1-of in this deck, and a lot of you guys thought I was crazy for playing this card at 1, but laughs in the first Darklord. But what this card does is it cannot be special summoned, and if this card is tribute summoned, you can special summon Darklord monsters from your hand or deck up to the number of effect monsters your opponent controls. And then while you control another Darklord monster, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and then once per turn, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of Darklord monsters on the field. And if you do, you gain 500 life points for each Darklord card sent to the graveyard by this effect. Now, this card's kind of been power crept a little bit, which is a little bit crazy to me, because the first Darklord has power crept it, and also the Condemned Darklord has kind of power crept it, but you still have to play it as a 1-of to fusion summon into your copy of the first Darklord to get its board wipe effect, which is really pivotal. We then play a single copy of Tezlpakapoka. What this card does is if a Darklord monster you control be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can discard this card instead, and then also shares the ability of paying 1,000 life points to copy a spell or trap in the graveyard that's a Darklord. We play 3 copies of Darklord Superbia. Darklord Superbia, I think, is always going to be a 3-of in the deck to me. A lot of people have been dropping this card down to 2. I think that's totally incorrect. I think this card needs to be a 3-of because you want to see it, you want to get it in the graveyard. It's a big combo piece. And if this card is special summoned from the graveyard, then you get to target a fairy monster in your graveyard and special summon it. That's really good to put 2,900 beat stick on your side of the field, along with a Darklord that can copy an effect, is really good. It essentially gets you both your fusion materials along with your copy of your, if you have Morningstar in your hand, you bring back a Superbia and you have a copy of a shell, you essentially have your fusion materials on your side of the field when you summon Superbia. We then play a single copy of Zerato. Zerato can board wipe the field because if you have 4 or more Darklord monsters with different names in your graveyard, you can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 dark monster, and then you can send a dark monster from your hand to the graveyard and destroy all monsters your opponent controls, and this card is activated, you destroy it during the end phase of this turn. Now, this was actually the funny thing about this card, is this was actually the very first Darklord monster ever created, and the really cool thing about this is it's part of the Dark Armed Dragon Dark Counterparts series, which is really cool. We play a single copy of Darklord Nargal. Nargal is, I think, a good 1-of in the deck. It is a level 8 Darklord monster, so it's a trade-in target, and you can, if a fairy monster attacks a defensive monster, it makes it inflict piercing damage. So it gives all of your fairy monsters piercing damage, and it also has the pay a stack and then get a spell or trap in your graveyard copy effect, where you shuffle back into the deck. You play 2 copies of Darklord Naston. Naston's pretty good in the deck too, because what Naston does is it helps you unbreak your hand a little bit. Before, I didn't like Naston. Naston was like my least favorite Darklord, because I felt like he cost too much to special summon him, because you have to send 2 Darklord cards from your hand to the graveyard to special summon him. I felt like that was a lot of sugar for a nickel. I thought that was not enough, and like you needed to discard 1 for 1, but 2 for 1, you're going -2. But now with Darklord Uprising, sometimes I'll actually end up with this card in my hand and I'll go, okay, I need to get this out of my hand. Or there'll be something in my hand, like a copy of Superbia that I won't want. And I'll go ahead and ditch it, get the copy of Nastin on my side of the field, and then I'll have Nastin's ability for paying a stack with the copy of Uprising in the graveyard, and he sets up plays now. I've thought about bumping him up to 3, actually, but I'm just playing at it 2 right now because I feel like he's fine at 2, but I might in the future bump him up to 3 by dropping one of my copies of Uprising out. We then play a single copy of Amadus. Amadus shares the ability of paying 1,000 life points to be able to copy an effect. And if this card, you can discard this card and a Darklord card, then target a Darklord card in your graveyard and add it back to your hand, which can help you out a lot with your copy of the first Darklord, because if you use your copy of your Morningstar, you can discard Amadus and another Darklord card to get your copy of Morningstar back to your hand, just in case you need to drop a second one of these. It's rare, but sometimes it comes up. We then play 3 copies of Indulged Darklord. Indulged Darklord is probably one of the best new support cards in the entire deck. What she does is, if she's normal or special summon, you get to take 2 Darklords and put one in your hand and put one on your opponent's side of the field. But you cannot activate effects except for fairy monsters for the rest of the turn. What you're always going to summon to your opponent's side of the field is Ukobak. And what you're usually going to add to your hand is your copy of Morningstar. Ukobak's effect is if this card is normal or special summon, you can send a Darklord from your hand or deck to the graveyard. The reason I play this at 2 now is because it is my target to actually give my opponent with the Indulged Darklord, and so I wanted to play it at a little higher number than 1, but I didn't want to play 3 at the same time. So I felt like 2 was the perfect ratio to keep, because I can normal summon it out, send the Uprising of the Darklords to the graveyard, and then I also had the ability that I can use Indulged Darklord, give it to my opponent, and it's only 1,000 points. I can swing over it for free, pretty much, and have a Darklord in my graveyard that I can revive if I need it. Then we play a single copy of Archlord Christia. I still think 1 Christia is fine in the deck. I probably wouldn't play it anymore at this point, because you can special summon it if you have 4 or more fairies in your graveyard, and I've summoned this way from your hand. You can target 1 fairy from your graveyard and add it back to your hand, and neither player can special summon monsters, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can place it on top of the deck instead. Really good card. You could consider playing it at more than 1. I remember when I played Christia Turbo, where you played like 3 Christias in the deck and 3 Vanity's Fiend, and it was really weird. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn, which we're going to have other Reborn spells, but this is just a good extender for the deck. We're playing 3 copies of Banishment. Banishment is essentially the search of the deck. It lets you add any Darklord card from your deck to your hand. We play 3 copies of Darklord Contact. What this card does is it lets you special summon a Dark Orb monster from your graveyard in defense position, which is really good to be able to just revive a copy of Superbia and then get another Dark Lord onto your side of the field, which is really cool. We play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness, which is basically just a good draw power card in the deck. 3 copies of Trade-In, which is, again, a good draw power in the deck. You play a lot of different targets, from Christia to Nargal to your copy of Darklord Zerato and your 3 Superbias. You play about 6 targets for this card, and it's really easy to draw into any of those targets and just ditch them for another draw. We play 3 copies of Call by the Grave for the last 3 spells. This is pretty much all you need for the spells in this deck. The copies of Trade-In are really good. Now, I will mention, you guys, if you want to drop the Call by the Graves, you can drop Call by the Graves and play 3 Forbidden Droplets. But I wanted to play Call by the Grave so I could essentially stop my opponent when I try and draw or add from deck to hand. I could stop the Ash. That's why I played this at 3. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So, for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Uprising of the Darklords, or Darklord Uprising. This card's really good in the deck. What this card does is it lets you send a Darklord monster from your hand or from your field to the graveyard, and then you get to fusion summon a Darklord fusion monster from your extra deck and your field. Then you can gain life points equal to the original attack of the monster sent to the graveyard to activate this effect. But here's the thing. I know that sounds like a 5 cards to actually summon the first Darklord, but it's not, okay? You never activate it on the field. You just don't do that. It costs too much. So what you do with this is that what you actually do is you get it in the graveyard, and then you use the pay a stack with like a shell, and then you fusion summon 3, shuffle this back into the deck, and then you get her effect where you fusion summon like her, Morningstar, and another Darklord on your side of the field, and drop the first Darklord on your opponent's turn, and then board wipe them, which is what's really cool. We play a single copy of Darklord Rebellion. Rebellion lets you send a Darklord monster from your hand or face up on your field to the graveyard, and then you destroy a card on the field, which is really good. One copy of Enchantment. This is essentially Snatch Steal. It lets you send a Darklord monster from your hand or face up on your field to the graveyard, and then take control of a face-up monster your opponent controls until the end phase. It's more like Change of Heart, I would say. Change of Heart is more of an accurate thing in trap form, but it's really good just to be able to take your opponent's monsters. We then play a single copy of the Sanctified Darklord. The Sanctified Darklord has the ability to let you send a Darklord from your hand or face your field to the graveyard, and then you get to negate the effects of an effect monster on the field until the end phase of the turn. And if you do, you gain life points equal to the attack of that monster. So I played these 5 in the deck. You could really get away with 1 copy of Uprising if you wanted to. I like 2 because I don't mind drawing it, but I thought about dropping one of them for another Naston. If you want to go that route, drop 1 Uprising and play a 3rd Naston. That's the only thing I've really thought about changing in the deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of the first Darklord. This card is absolutely crazy. It takes 3 Dark Fairies to summon this card. And then once per turn, you can target fairy monsters you control. Your opponent can target your fairy monster you control with card effects. And then you can only use the following effects of the first Darklord once per turn. If this card is fusion summoned, including using a Darklord Morningstar as a material, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. That's really, really good to board wipe your opponent. And also, during the main phase, you can quick effect pay 1,000 life points to special summon a fairy monster from your graveyard, hand or graveyard. So really, you're only putting 2 monsters into this because you can revive one of them that you sent to the graveyard off of this effect, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Condemned Darklord. Condemned Darklord is still a good card to play in this deck. It lets you tribute summon fairy monsters with 2 tributes by banishing 2 materials from your graveyard instead. And then you can discard a card to take a Darklord monster from your deck to your hand, and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. And you can only use this effect once per turn. And then once per turn during the end phase, you can gain 500 life points for each fairy monster on the field, which is really, really, really good. And then we play a single copy of Appaloosa because you can put all the monsters on the field that you particularly need, which is super helpful to be able to do. 1 copy of Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker is really good just to be able to pop cards on the field. 1 copy of the Blackluster Soldier Link monster. This card's really good in the deck because it lets you just have an untargetable monster, and everything you play is really high level. So it's super easy to actually put the Blackluster Soldier Link monster on the field. If it destroys something by battle, it either gains 1500, can attack twice during the battle phase, or banish a card on the field that doesn't target. 1 copy of Unicorn just to be able to bounce cards on the field, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and Cerberus to pop monsters, and they're all for Access Code Talker as well. Ravenous Tarantula is really good in this deck because if you make this card and your life points are different than your opponent's, then you gain life points, or you gain attack, all your monsters gain attack points equal to that amount, which is really good. 1 copy of number 38 because it negates spells. Number 23, Lancelot, because it can negate monster effects as well. A lot of people forget that about this card because if once per turn during either player's turn, when a spell trap or another monster effect is activated, you can detach a material from this card and negate its activation. Like, really good just to have extra monster negation. And it can attack your opponent for 2,000. And if this card attacks directly while it has materials, then inflicts damage to your opponent, you can target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it. Yes, please. And then 1 copy of number 97, Dragobolon. Really good card. And then a single copy of number 100, Numeron Dragon. You can use this to summon the Numeron Dragon off your number 38, because you can summon both of these and then overlay the 38 on under the copy of 100 with Dragobolon, which is pretty good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Really fun deck to play around with. I have been playing this deck ever since it was released. I remember buying shells for like $25, $30 when they first came out, and now they're like $3, which is kind of heartbreaking, but I still got my money's worth out of this deck because I love this deck, and I played it ever since it was released. So definitely give this deck a try. I highly recommend Darklords to you guys. It's super fun to play around with, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.